What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Monday Scale News Update. If you're not familiar with the show, we talk about the topics that happened in the scale world of RCs over the past week. This week, we've got a handful of topics. Let's jump right into them. For you tiny tire fans, Proline over the last week released a new 4.19 tire in the KM3 tread pattern style. Now, they actually released this tire on a picture of a Lego vehicle, so some people kind of missed what they were releasing, but you can check that out. Definitely, you know, with the movement of a lot of people really digging the smaller tires for the more Class 1 style, this is another option for you guys. And the BF Goodrich KM3 tread patterns are always a pretty good looking one, so you can check the details for that out in the link in the description below. A handful of weeks back, I showed you guys a bomber radiator that was made by a gentleman named Mad NGH. And he released a new dash kit for the Vanquish VS4-10 Origin body. Now, this is a super high detailed dash kit that's actually shown with the International Scout badging on it, but it's got a ton of integrated details. There's two different types of 3D printed parts on it. Some are more rugged, some are extra high detail. It's got a ton of little details, a wiring harness, a PCB, and just more detail than I've really ever seen anybody put into one simple dash piece. Throw that in the link below, and I'll try and link to where some of his other products are located or available now as well. The next one I actually want to touch base from last week. Last week I discussed RC 4-wheel drive releasing a new drop-in interior for their Mojave body or the Hilux body, whichever one you know it by, and I actually linked the price to one of the other brands that they carry called CC Hand with a much higher price tag. The new one that they released is actually much more affordable at a sub $40 price tag, and I'll link the correct item in the description below this week. Also in the news, Matt from the Scale Builders Guild and myself have been doing the monthly Mayhem Dragbolt series, where we're taking SCX-10-2 deadbolts, trying to turn them into speed machines. Over the last week, Matt and I both posted a couple of videos each, and you can go check those out. I'll link those in the description below as well. Just to catch you all up, currently my deadbolt is almost breaking that 50-mile-an-hour barrier. The new video will drop Wednesday, when hopefully I'll be able to crack that number. And lastly, for the news topics for this week, this one isn't actually on a specific item, but something that you may start seeing in general throughout the market. And that is that we may start seeing tariffs hitting the electronics that come in for our RCs. Now, we could see a 10 to 25% increase in prices on these items, depending on how manufacturers, distributors, and retailers actually end up passing on those higher costs, but they will likely see those costs hitting their products as they're trying to bring them into the United States. So just be aware, over the next couple of months, you may start seeing those prices on electronics start creeping up. But time will only tell how this will personally affect us, and we'll just have to wait and see. And that'll pretty much do it for the actual news topics for this week. And as we've been doing in the past several weeks, I posted on social media asking for your questions to answer during the news. So let's jump into the Instagram questions first. First question is, will I get to see you or the rig at Crawlapalooza? This year I will not be making it to Crawlapalooza. I'll be at Crawl for the Cure here. Wish I could make it to Oklahoma, but definitely really looking forward to Crawl for the Cure. Next question says, will you put something like Lexan on the bottom to cut wind, drag, and get faster times? This is definitely in reference to the Dragbolt, and I definitely will be doing something to the bottom of the vehicle to help smooth this thing through the air. Maybe I'll get to that this week. Next one says, what tires are those? Proline Prime, and what size? Again, this is in reference to the Dragbolt, and yes, I am running the Proline Primes. Those are the 8th scale size. Overall diameter on them is about 4.3 or 4.4. The next one says, you may have touched the subject before. I'm interested on how you pay the bills, how you get started in the industry, who signs your checks, and who you answer to. Your social media content is on point. Just curious how you get to where you are. I do work at Vanquish. That is my full-time job. My social media and YouTube stuff I do on the side. You know, it's something I've been doing for a very long time. I got started actually when I was in college, learning how to draw my own parts. I was in college for engineering, and I did civil engineering by trade for about 10 years. But during that time, I obviously was very familiar with computer-aided drafting, 3D modeling, things like that. So I just started to draw my own parts, and some people noticed that, and I started doing work for multiple companies in the industry that many of you would know. And then over years, as I developed more social media and more YouTube presence, things like that, I was then offered a position where now I am here at Vanquish. But I do still do the YouTube and things like that on the side as my own. This one says, why isn't the Dragbolt red? Everyone knows red is faster. because that would mean I would have to paint it, and I suck at painting. Fish tacos versus beef sandwich in a street fight. Who you got? What's your thoughts on converting an SCX 10-1 into an SCX 10-2? Your channel is the only one without fake news. Keep it up. Beef sandwich is obviously going to be tougher than fish tacos. I think that's a no-brainer. Thoughts on converting an SCX 10-1 into an SCX 10-2? Actually takes quite a bit of work. There's still a lot of difference between an SCX 10-1 and an SCX 10-2, specifically with the chassis mounted servo and panhard system. You know, you need to take get a set of SCX 10-2 axles, a full link set, and something to convert that steering system in the front. So it takes quite a bit. Now, if it's worth it, it's hard to say. It depends on how much you've done to your SCX 10-1 and how much it would take you to convert that to be usable with an SCX 10-2. I would probably push someone to just try and pick up an SCX 10-2 separately and either offload or keep the SCX 10-1 as a loaner or backup truck. Next, this question says, what parts from the VS4-10 work on the SCX 10 platform and what from the SCX 10 work on the VS4-10? It's a good question. From the VS4-10, the bumpers, front and rear, would bolt up to an SCX 10. The skid plate is slightly different, but would bolt into an SCX 10 as well. And the cross braces in the rear, you can bolt into an SCX 10 with, you know, finding a couple of the holes that match up. The shock towers would not be compatible. The transmission is the same design. The front axle with the offset front differential would not easily bolt into an SCX 10-2 platform. The rear axle, however, would bolt into an SCX 10-2 platform. And then of course the body, tires, wheels, things like that, easily replaceable or transferable to an SCX 10-2 style truck. SCX 10-2 style knuckles would bolt onto the VS4-10. Some will require some additional clearancing where they meet the axle because the VS4-10 axle housing does have a little bit more beef around the C-hubs. The ring and pinion gears in the VS4-10 are the same as the SCX 10-2. However, the VS4-10 ring gear and locker has 6 holes rather than the 3 that you see in a normal SCX 10-2. Now, then there's things like sliders where you technically could bolt other SCX 10-2 or SCX 10-1 style sliders onto the VS4-10, but you know, with how the body is retained into the VS4-10 and how the battery tray all kind of fits in together, it would take some working around with how you're going to mount the battery or the electronics, things like that. So there's things that would work, but always gonna take a little bit of finagling to get right. This one says, will the Dragbolt ever see rocks? Hashtag drag bouncer. I doubt that Dragbolt will ever see rocks. The front servo hangs about an inch off of the pavement, so definitely would not be an ideal situation to ever see rocks. This one says, what will you and Matt be doing with the Dragbolts after the competition? I have no idea. It will basically be a useless vehicle, and I will definitely try to be hitting the highest speed I can, so there's a good chance that my Dragbolt will fit into a much smaller pile of parts by the time it's done. Next one says, tall and skinny or short and fat? Crawler tires, that is. Tall and skinny for me. Next question says, do you still feel the same about the Bomber as you did when it first came out? Yep, still love the Bomber, still think it's a blast to drive. Definitely my favorite 2.2 truck on the market. And the last one for Instagram says, how will you comfort Matt when he loses the Dragbolt challenge? Comfort's not my strong point. Ridicule is more of my go-to. Now with that, let's jump over to the Facebook questions. This question says, when will we get a Axial 2017 Rubicon kit with the XJ trans? Probably not gonna happen. That trans is really only for kits. Normally we don't see more than one kit of a particular vehicle variety at a time, so I wouldn't expect to see that combination. This question says, what is the best RC car ever made from the factory? Man, that is a really, really tough question for me. I always look to modify everything. The best RC car ever from the factory, I would probably say, is the Dancing Rider. This question says, what RC have you always wanted but have never picked up, past or current? There's some weird ones that I've always kind of wanted and just never picked up. For some reason, I've always wanted a Tamiya F1 car just because I think, you know, those look really cool. The Tamiya front wheel drive, like the Mini, I've always thought were cool for some reason too. I always remember seeing the RC dragsters you could buy in the back of the magazines, you know, way back in the day. Either the actual like Top Fuel style dragster or the motorcycle, and the nitro versions. Now I never have owned a nitro vehicle, but for some reason those from like back in the day, that was when I was starting to get into RC and always looking at the magazines, and those were always kind of in those ads in the back. Always just thought they looked pretty fun. And the last question says, are you going to put a rocket in your Dragbolt? I've definitely thought about it and even discussed it, but I'm probably not going to, just because of the current wildfire situations in the state of California and my luck with fire and RC cars. I think I'll leave it strictly electric powered. But that's gonna do it for this week, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you all have an awesome week coming up. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're not already, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the Scale News Update, Monthly Mayhem, or the new Intro to 3D Printing series. So, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.